The New Orleans Saints offense is evolving right before our eyes, and the major statistical category where the Saints offense and defense are complementing one another better than any team across the NFL. But first, is Marshawn Lattimore putting together an early Defensive Player of the Year bid? We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another Analytics Tuesday episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering the New Orleans Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks as always for making us your first listen of the day. Remember, we're here available for you free and on all platforms, including on YouTube. I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, Canal Street Chronicles, Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at rockauto.com. Don't forget to let them know that Locked On sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. All right, y'all, I want to talk a little bit about Marshawn Lattimore to kick off the episode today. Is he putting together an early bid for Defensive Player of the Year? I think it's fair to say that he should be in that conversation. Now, we're only 5 games into the NFL season, so I know we should pump the brakes, but listen, there is no doubt about what Marshon Lattimore is doing right now and how phenomenal he is playing. Let's just look at week 5 here to get started. Marshon Lattimore going up against one of the best young wide receivers in the NFL in Terry McLaurin, targeted 9 times in this game, allowed only 2 catches for 31 yards, including -1 yard after catch, meaning he continuously made tackles at the catch point, not allowing yards after catch in this one. The remarkable part about this game is that he had 6 pass breakups, not 6 passes defended, not 6 passes he got in the way of, none of that. 6 pass breakups, absolutely outstanding, and was not called for a single pass interference penalty on any of those pass breakups. He was called for a pass interference penalty in the back of the end zone, which was a little bit of a trash call, if we're being honest. But when it comes down to it, a phenomenal game for Marshawn Lattimore, a 41.4 NFL passer rating when targeted in this one, and an overall defensive grade, according to Pro Football Focus, the best of the New Orleans Saints defenders with an 85.4. He's also got just over a 68 passer rating when targeted allowed so far this season. We'll talk about why that's important here in just a moment, but let's isolate a little bit further. I mentioned that he was going up against a very fantastic and special talent in Terry McLaurin in this one. He was targeted 8 times when in coverage on Terry McLaurin, allowing only 2 catches for 31 yards, and 5 of his 6 pass breakups came against McLaurin. His other pass breakup came on a target to Ricky Seals-Jones, the big tight end. Marshon Lattimore was also in primary coverage for 5 failed third down attempts in the passing game by the Washington football team. And there have been a lot of people who have said, hey, Marshon Lattimore had this great day, but we should keep it in context because it was Taylor Heinicke who was the quarterback on the opposite side. However, Taylor Heinicke has been a quarterback now starting over the course of the last 4 games this NFL season and came in partway through the first game, and ain't no other defensive back had 6 pass breakups in coverage up against Taylor Heinicke. So if we're going to say that it's up to the quarterback here as opposed to the individual play of the defensive back, that we should be seeing a repeated sort of pattern here of multiple pass breakups and near record-setting pass breakups by individual players every time Taylor Heinicke is a starting quarterback, and that's just simply not the reality here. We have to remember that Terry McLaurin is an eraser for some of those bad passes, those passes that are behind, a little bit ahead, a little bit high. Terry McLaurin usually able to bring those down, but Marshawn Lattimore not allowing that to happen. We can't take away Marshawn Lattimore's fantastic day because the quarterback that he was going up against isn't a name that a lot of people recognize. The simple fact of the matter is that Marshawn Lattimore still had to show up and do his job, and he did it to the highest of standards. And he had some company in this one. I want to give a quick shout out to Paulson Adebo opposite him. He played in only 60 coverage snaps, or excuse me, 60 total defensive snaps in this game. By the way, Marshawn Lattimore there, 9 targets, 2 catches, 31 yards, 6 pass breakups, 83 defensive plays from Marshon Lattimore. He should not, just by the sheer number of things, should not have had the day that he had, but he did. Paulson Adebo in coverage opposite him, though. 1 catch allowed for 6 yards on 2 targets, no yards after catch, so an immediate tackle at the catch point there. Had the 1 interception, a 16.2 passer rating when targeted. So far for the New Orleans Saints, there are only 3 players on their defense that have given up a passer rating of over 100. And so far, those players are Zach Bond, who doesn't play much coverage anymore now that Pete Werner is back. Caden Ellis, who's not on the field very much as the starting Sam linebacker, and then Paulson Adebo, who really had his sort of passer rating when targeted wrecked a little bit up against the New York Giants. But back to Marshon Lattimore here, I want to talk a little bit about not only his individual performance against the Washington football team, but as a whole across the NFL. So if we take a look at Pro Football Focus and we're looking at all of these players that have had at least about 120 defensive snaps so far. Right now, when it comes down to cornerbacks across the NFL, Marshon Lattimore with the second highest defensive grade with an 82.6, just under Casey Hayward, who's sitting down with an 89, who's having a fantastic but yet quiet year so far. Casey Hayward only 5 catches allowed on 15 targets. That's a 33.3% reception percentage allowed so far this season. Marshon Lattimore, though, targeted nearly twice as much, 28 targets, but still only allowing 12 catches, 42.9 catch percentage when targeted so far. Now, he's allowing a lot of yards, 224, 54 of those coming in that busted coverage against Saquon Barkley, but he is being targeted twice as often as Casey Hayward. He is playing more than Casey Hayward. He is being looked at more than Casey Hayward, and he is allowing still only 42.9% of catches to be completed and only a 68.2 NFL pass rating. The most impressive part, though, Marshon Lattimore leading the league in pass breakups by a mile, 10 right now. Second place is 5 in Teron Johnson, who is playing with Buffalo right now. Marshon Lattimore's forced incompletions are 11. His forced incompletion percentage, 39%, 29% by Bryce Callahan right under him over in Denver. So not a lot of comparison when it comes to the way that Marshon Lattimore is affecting receivers at the catch point. We saw that last week with the 6 pass breakups, but not only are we seeing it from last week, we've seen it so far over the season. That's why I think that Marshon Lattimore, who's already earned the Defensive Rookie of the Year award once before in his career, could be an early consideration here. Just 5 games through the regular season, but if he keeps up this pace, should be in the conversation and can be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year here just soon after signing his most recent contract. And if he gets that cast off his hand and turns some of those 11 forced incompletions into interceptions, it's only going to help his case even more as the season rolls along. Now, as the season rolls along, we're seeing some evolution for the New Orleans Saints over on the offensive side as well. We're going to talk about how they've changed so far by taking a look at personnel groupings and what it means for the New Orleans Saints as they move ahead and get some of their weapons back. We've got that for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. But don't forget about our friends over at betonline.ag. Hey, look, no line for you for the New Orleans Saints coming up on week 6. But if you want to get in on some of the other action all across the NFL, you have a bunch of games that you can get in on. You can build your own props. They even have a live betting mechanism too. You can bet first half, second half, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, a whole bunch of good stuff going on there. You want to get in on some of the big fights that are coming up, the MLB playoffs underway, the NBA tipping off, almost a kicking off, tipping off here right around the corner. So much for you to get in on, and I'm going to help you have a little bit more fun with it. Go ahead and use the promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, on your first deposit so that you can get a 50% welcome bonus when you sign up for the first time. That's promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to receive that bonus. Football, basketball, boxing, everything that you could be looking for can be found over at betonline.ag, where the game starts. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Thank you so much for making us your first listen here at the show. Don't forget, we're available for you free and on all platforms, including on YouTube as well. Hi, hello, what's up for those of you that are tuning in on YouTube? I want to talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints offense here because they are evolving right before our eyes, and we've been watching it happen over the course of the first 5 games. Now they go into the bye week, hopefully come out on the other side of the bye week a little bit healthier. Maybe Michael Thomas is back up against Seattle. Maybe Tre'Quan Smith is back up against Seattle. Or at least some of those pieces, as well as guys like Quan Alexander and Will Lutz, David Onyemata, some important defensive and special teams pieces, offensive line pieces, could be coming back at least over the couple of weeks following the bye week. But hey, as the Saints get healthier, you're going to continue to see a growing trend here for the New Orleans Saints, and it is the volume at which they are passing the ball. Now, we talked a little bit about this last week when we said, hey, this Washington football team, this secondary is very weak. This is an opportunity for the Saints wide receivers to have a bit of a get-right game. Well, it seemed like they figured it out, as did Jameis Winston, even though Jameis Winston only completed 50% of his passes and still had some misses in his throws. But just like any other quarterback, I'm not specifically singling anything out about Jameis, just about a quarterback who did miss some throws in this game. So you're going to see things settle down, get a little bit more comfortable. Some of those go away when you have an eraser like Michael Thomas, just like I was talking about with Terry McLaurin as well. So what is it that you're looking at so far over the course of the Saints season that should give you hope? And well, a lot of it has to do with the play calling. I want to take a look at personnel groupings for the New Orleans Saints. The Saints often very heavy in 11 and 12 personnel, so that's where we're going to stay. Just a reminder, when we're talking about personnel groups, we're talking about 2-digit numbers, 11, 12, 22, 13, things like that, 21, 20. Basically, what those 2 digits represent, those 2-digit numbers represent, is the first digit is the number of running backs, second digit is the number of tight ends. So we're going to talk about 11 personnel, which is 1 and 1, 1 running back, 1 tight end, which leaves 3 spaces for wide receivers on the field. And then we'll talk about 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 tight ends, which usually leaves space for another 2 wide receivers on the field. But do keep in mind that oftentimes when the New Orleans Saints go out and deploy 12 personnel, 1 running back with 2 tight ends, they oftentimes will only have 1 wide receiver on the field with an additional offensive lineman, a 6th offensive lineman. Think back to the big 58-yard, not touchdown catch, but the big 58-yard play to Marquez Callaway in the New York Giants game just a couple of weeks ago, that type of a set. So for the New Orleans Saints, you can see a little bit of kind of all over the place when it comes to 11 personnel. Traditional 11 personnel is what most teams play in the NFL. That gives you the slot wide receiver, 3 receivers out on the field. This is what you usually see across the league. So far for the Saints, weeks 1 through 5, going in order, they've played 11 personnel 58% of the time, 65, 26% in that week 3 game against the New England Patriots. Very interesting there. 60%, 44% up last week against the Washington football team. So they didn't live in the big high power personnel group, which is usually that 44%. But we'll come back to those. 12 personnel is a bit of a different story. You can see a big time trend here in the way that the Saints have been playing at 28% in week 1. This is going forward through week 15, 19%, 48%, 14%, 22%. So we saw a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets on the road against New England. We saw it as well pretty substantially on the road last week or this past week against the Washington football team. But it's the percentages within those that I'm really, really interested in. Remember, we talked about 11 personnel where the Saints kind of were going all over the place with it. The Saints called 11 personnel or went out in 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers, 44% of the time against the Washington football team. However, they threw the ball out of those sets 63% of the time, second most that you've seen so far this season. Now, the same story goes over on 12 personnel, and this is where things get really important for New Orleans. 67% of the time with 2 tight ends on the field, the Saints threw the ball. 12%, that's against the Washington football team. 12 personnel is usually it's kind of a heavier running package. You have the 5 offensive linemen, 2 tight ends, and usually you're trying to run there. This game, the New Orleans Saints overwhelmingly outthrew themselves in 12 personnel or across any of the other weeks so far this season. 24% of the time in week 1, 38, 27, and 11% in the loss against the New York Giants. So you see the New Orleans Saints finding a way, even though they lost Deontay Harris, even though they lost Taysom Hill, getting those throws in and finding ways to manufacture that, whether it be with tight ends on the field or wide receivers on the field. And you'll notice that Adam Troutman had a couple of catches late in this game and really finally started to kind of show up the way that Saints fans had hoped that he would. I don't think that that's a fluke, y'all. I think that that becomes a part of the game plan as guys like Nick Vannett come back to this offense, who will have probably a little bit of an underrated value for this New Orleans Saints team, as he can take some of the responsibilities that Adam Troutman is having to take on as a pass blocker or as a run blocker, especially with a hurt offensive line, giving him the opportunity to potentially free up a little bit to be a bit more of a receiving threat, a la what Juwan Johnson has been so far this season. So we're seeing this change for the Saints so far. Out of the four touchdowns that Jameis Winston threw against Washington last week, one of those was in 12 personnel, and then 3 of them were in 11 personnel. So you saw the firepower there, even though they didn't go full high octane out of 11 personnel, and they really lived to throw out of 12. This is a really good sign for New Orleans, because if they can attack out of both of these personnel groupings, out of both of these, the sort of litany of formations that come with them, it makes the Saints very unpredictable. If they can attack with one tight end on the field, they can attack through the air and on the ground with, 2 tight ends on the field. This really, really opens them up as players like Michael Thomas and Tre'Quan Smith come back, which become a little bit more attention needy from defenses, especially Michael Thomas in the passing game, might open up some more opportunities for guys like Adam Troutman and some of these other receivers as well. Not just the tight ends, but also the other receivers that'll be out on the field. And of course, that all pays off for Alvin Kamara, because it allows him to get involved in the passing game, but it also potentially opens up the middle of the field for him to get churning some more in the run game. So this New Orleans Saints offense, already evolving before our eyes, about to get a lot healthier, and will continue to do so throughout the season. So the Saints figuring it out over on the offensive side, but there's one specific thing that the Saints just seem to have figured out, both on the offensive and the defensive side. We're going to go into EPA and then break it down a little bit further to talk about where the New Orleans Saints are doing something better than any team in the NFL on both the offensive and defensive side as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. But first, hey, look, I'm dealing with some car issues again. Y'all know me. I'm always dealing with my stuff. So I head over to rockauto.com, was able to pick up everything that I needed for a very cheap price, not having to deal with any of the brick and mortar store type of situations, not getting upcharged because I'm a do-it-yourselfer. No, I pay the same price, and that's the best thing about Rock Auto is that you pay the same price whether you're a do-it-yourselfer or you're a professional, and you don't have to sit around and wait for somebody to go into the back, try to find the part that they're looking for, come back, tell you that they ain't got it, and then tell you that they were going to have to order it for you anyway. Now you don't even have to leave the home. You just go ahead and order what you need. Rock Auto will go ahead and send it straight to your place in a box at your door. You ain't even got to leave the house. You ain't even got to get out of your pajamas. You can do it from the couch while you're watching Sunday football, some Saturday football, some great football action coming up this weekend. Don't interrupt your rhythm on the weekends. You feel me? Go ahead and head over to rockauto.com. Grab whatever it is that you need for your vehicle, regardless of make, model, year. They have an incredibly expansive catalog that should have you covered no matter what you're looking for and no matter what you're looking for it for, if that makes sense. So go and check them out, rockauto.com. Don't forget to let them know that Locked On sent you. But right Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us section, amazing selection, reliable low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's Analytics Tuesday episode, our big nerdy episode where we go through all the numbers. We talked about Marshawn Lattimore's great day by the numbers, his early Defensive Player of the Year bid. Yeah, come at me, argue with a wall. I don't want to hear it. Personnel groupings as well, what it means for the New Orleans Saints so far and how their offense is evolving. Now, I want to talk about something that the New Orleans Saints are doing better than any team in the NFL. I want to start off with EPA here, though, to give us first a little bit of an idea of the efficiency for the New Orleans Saints offense and defense. Up against the Washington football team, the Saints ranked 12th overall in terms of EPA. That was 15th in passing EPA and 15th in run EPA. So how does that factor into what they're looking like season-wide so far? And remember, EPA is just a measure of play-by-play efficiency. Are they successful plays? Are they not successful plays? And then you take all of that, average it up, you get a number, and then those numbers allow you to rank 1 through 32 across the NFL. We don't have to dig too deeply into it, but we can see where the New Orleans Saints stack up over the course of the season so far just by looking at where they are 1 through 32. And so far, the Saints in total EPA, which is run and pass combined, they're sitting right in the middle of the pack at 15th in the NFL. But there's a big sort of it's kind of a disparaging right now in between what you see in terms of pass and run. Right now, the Saints actually 7th in passing EPA or drop back EPA, so efficiency in the passing game looking pretty good, but 23rd in the run game. So some of this has to do with the fact that, hey, is Alvin Kamara creating for himself? Is the offensive line creating for him? What does it look like? And really, you can see Alvin Kamara creating for himself a lot. He's got a lot of yards after contact, so on and so forth. So that sometimes can cut into what your efficiency looks like, but nothing to really be concerned about there. The Saints are actually looking pretty good because at least their success rate on the ground is ranked 10th in the NFL so far this season. So they are successful at a high rate, even though the efficiency can sometimes waver. Over on the defensive side, in terms of the efficiency that they allow or don't allow to opposing offenses, the Saints are actually ranked 7th, they were ranked 7th in week 5 up against the Washington football team in terms of total EPA and efficiency on defense, 5th against the pass, 14th against the run. How does that impact their season outlook so far? Well, they're 4th in terms of total EPA, 4th in terms of passing EPA, and 6th in terms of run EPA. So they're looking really, really good on the defensive side and continuing to look that way. And look, I know that they gave up and had another day to where you can look at the yardage from that Washington football team games where there was, well over 300 yards, almost 400 net yards from that Washington football team offense. But again, the Saints were on the field for 83 plays. So if you look at it, not a very big average per play in terms of the yardage and the efficiency that Washington football team offense had just wasn't really there against New Orleans. So the Saints doing a good job there. But where have the Saints been doing the best job in the NFL on not only the defensive side, but also the offensive side? It's really been the red zone. And it complements one another extremely well because not only are the Saints converting in the red zone over the offensive side, they're getting into the red zone. Right now, the New Orleans Saints are first in the NFL for converting red zone possessions to touchdowns. They have now scored 13 touchdowns on 14 red zone possessions. Yes, you heard that correctly. 13 of 14 in the red zone, 92.9%, number 1 in the NFL for converting those red zone possessions into touchdowns. Now, when it comes to the defensive side, the Saints tied for first when it comes to denying touchdowns on opposing red zone possessions. So far, they've only allowed 5 touchdowns on 14 red zone possessions, 35.7% conversion rate for opposing offenses. That is absolutely phenomenal on both sides of the ball for the New Orleans Saints, and a huge reason why in each of the wins they've had so far this year, why those wins have happened. I mean, their ability to stop teams in their tracks in the red zone has been absolutely remarkable. And their ability to be unstoppable in the red zones themselves, even when it's God's plan. As Jameis mentioned, one of the red zone touchdowns that he threw, the one to Marquez Callaway, was all God. Hey, regardless, that was a touchdown for them, and that ended up being one of those 13 out of 14. This team is nearly perfect and unstoppable in the red zone on offense. I expect that to get only better when Michael Thomas is back, when Tre'Quan Smith, who is fantastic when it comes to contested physical catches over the middle of the field, when Nick Vannett comes back and it potentially opens up the field for a big jump ball guy like Marquez Callaway and, of course, Adam Troutman and Michael Thomas, drawing all of that attention and how that benefits those guys and impacts those guys as well. Even Deontay Harris has proven to be a weapon in the red zone in the recent years because of his ability to move quickly in short areas and find his way open in the middle of traffic. I mean, this offense in the red zone should only get better as Michael Thomas and all these other pieces return. And this New Orleans Saints defense should actually only get better in the red zone as well. Because remember, David Onyemata still has not been a part of this team. And David Onyemata is easily right now the New Orleans Saints' best defensive lineman. he hasn't been on the field so far this season, and the Saints will need him and want him drastically as he comes back. We're going to talk more about the New Orleans Saints defensive line in tomorrow's episode in our Film Watch Wednesday. We're going to break down a couple of big plays from Marshawn Lattimore, look at the defensive line, who had the most pressures, who's been contributing most consistently on that line, and what are the New Orleans Saints missing. We'll break all of that down in our Film Watch Wednesday tomorrow. No crossover Thursday this week because there's no game, so we get to march our way into a very relaxing weekend, but still going to give you all the information you need after the first, we'll call it quarter, of the New Orleans Saints season has now come to an end. What does it mean for the New Orleans Saints? Where are they? Where are they headed as they move? We've got all that and much more here on Locked On Saints throughout the rest of the week. Y'all, I appreciate you so much once again for making us your first listen of the day every day. Now for your second listen, go and check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show to get all the information that you need around the NFL for less than 30 minutes. And if you don't mind, I'm going to give you a third listen today too. Your boy Q over at Locked On Raiders has a big story to cover when it comes to head coach John Gruden, the emails, the abrupt resignation, everything going on. If you want to hear the inside knowledge on that, nobody's got it like your boy Q over at Locked On Raiders. So go and show the homie some love and show him some support because he is about to have a mad busy week up ahead of him. Y'all, for everything in between here on Locked On Saints, don't forget you can always follow me on Twitter at RossJacksonNOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how your mom and them. Much love, everybody, and trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.